A young man recalls being chided for his love of playing with sand. Now he stands alone in a vast desert, forcibly relocated from his home, bleakly accepting that this exile means his current life is over. The story flashes back 3 years to the Maghreb Empire. At a lavish party, a young Prince Horus is congratulated on his 12th birthday. Nearby, 2 maids gossip, wondering what will finally be revealed now that he's come of age. The maids eagerly speculate about Horus's magical affinity attribute. Given that he has the highest magical power among the 5 siblings, they expect a powerful element like fire or wind. As Horus listens with a worried expression, he wonders what the outcome will be. One maid begins to mention his background, but is quickly silenced by her companion. The maids apologize for their inappropriate chatter on a celebratory day, while Horus tries to ignore them. All eyes turn to the stage as the ceremony begins to reveal Prince Horus's affinity. The result is announced with a single damning word, sand. A wave of disappointment and disdain washes over the crowd, and Horus feels the sudden cold shift in the atmosphere. The assembled guests look on with dark, judgmental expressions. Horus looks up in shock, confused by the hostile reaction. He is overwhelmed by the scornful whispers of the court. They see his affinity for sand, a single element, as useless. His high magical power means nothing. To them, he is still just the child of a concubine. The crowd's judgment echoes the cruel words of his own father. His father called him a disgrace to the royal family. On that day, Horus realized his life, as the 5th prince of the Maghreb Empire, had effectively ended. Back in the present, Horus stands under the harsh desert sun, reflecting on the labels that led to his exile: a concubine's child, a disgrace with a single sand affinity. He wonders if things could have been different, even as he acknowledges the amazing potential of sand magic. A quiet determination begins to burn within him. Letting go of his anger towards his 3rd brother, Horus resolves to survive, realizing that this desert is the perfect place for his sand magic. His first task is to find water. Using his sand sense ability, Horus scans the area. He quickly detects a water reaction deep beneath the dunes. He uses his sand magic to draw it to the surface. He creates a massive sand ripple, riding it like a wave across the desert. He laughs, realizing that what was meant as a punishment is actually a paradise for someone with his abilities. Filled with newfound purpose, Horus declares that the desert is the best place for him. He then gathers his power to cast another spell, a sand swirl. A massive vortex of sand forms at his command. It pulls water up from the underground source, creating a small pool in the center. With a source of water secured, Horus turns his attention to his next need, a place to live. Using his sand magic once more, he begins to construct a grand sand castle. From the desert floor, an entire castle rises, formed from the surrounding sand. Horus looks on with a satisfied smile. He surveys his creation, a magnificent castle standing proudly amidst the dunes, and deems it a good start. Stepping inside, Horus finds the interior too plain for his liking. He considers how he can modify his sand castle spell to build them. He decides that a castle needs beautiful decorations and sets to work. He plans out the rooms for his new home, including a private room and study. His new life in the desert has truly begun. Realizing it will be lonely, he decides to create a golem for protection and companionship. Exhausted from his efforts, Horus rests on a bed made of sand. He makes a mental list of necessities: food, plants, glass, and even fur. Deciding to be proactive, he uses his sand sense to search the area for anything useful. His sand sense picks up something alarming. He detects a collapsed person surrounded by multiple other signatures. Sensing danger, Horus immediately rushes out of his castle to investigate. Propelling himself with sand magic, Horus hurries toward the disturbance. He sees a person lying unconscious beside their camel, surrounded by a horde of goblins. The goblins close in on the helpless figure. Just as the goblins are about to strike, Horus arrives. He unleashes a barrage of sand spears. The attack instantly dispatches several of the creatures. Horus lands, relieved he made it in time. The remaining goblins turn their attention to him. He sees them as a mere distraction. He prepares to unleash more powerful magic. He conjures a swirling sandstorm to engulf the goblins. He follows it up with a powerful sand ring that expands outward, wiping out the remaining creatures. With the threat eliminated, Horus rushes to the side of the fallen traveler. He asks if they are okay. He gently lifts their hood to check on them. He is stunned to find a beautiful young woman, Isis, unconscious beneath the hood. He snaps out of his reverie, realizing this is no time to stare. He decides he must help her and carefully lifts her into his arms. Horus carries Isis back to his castle, reassuring the camel. He lays her down on a bed. He worries she won't recover without proper food. He tells the camel to wait as he goes to find something nutritious. Once again using sand sense, Horus searches for any sign of life that could be a food source. He detects a large group of biological reactions in the distance. He speeds off to investigate. He discovers 2 different species of giant desert ants locked in a fierce battle. Deciding to intervene, he uses a sand spring to create a barrier and separate the warring factions. The battle ceases. Horus wonders about the conflict between the ants. The ones he saved approach him, seemingly expressing their gratitude, and he cautiously accepts their thanks. As a reward, the ants offer him a gift. He examines the viscous liquid wrapped in a thin membrane. He recognizes the sweet smell and identifies it as ant honey. Overjoyed, he thanks the ants and rushes back to his castle. Horus carefully feeds the ant honey to Isis, little by little. He is determined to save her. He watches over her, eventually falling asleep at her bedside. Isis finally awakens and asks Horus if he is okay. She thanks Horus for saving her, but he brushes it off, saying he's just glad she has recovered. She then hesitates before making a request. With a hopeful and pleading look, Isis asks if she could stay there with him. Horus is left speechless by her question, as his solitary life in the desert is about to change forever. The honey ant queen expresses her gratitude for Horus's cooperation. He reassures her that in such a vast wasteland, they must help one another to survive. The honey ant queen explains that she intends to meet directly with the king of the iron ants to resolve their conflict, admitting her people are poor fighters. She asks Horus to lend them the power he used to repel the iron ants. Horus and Isis listen intently. Horus considers their mutual needs. The honey ants require fighting strength, while his group needs to learn about the desert. He proposes a transactional relationship, offering his magic and combat support in exchange for their honey. The queen gratefully accepts the proposal. Horus suggests they head to the iron ant nest immediately. As they travel across the dunes on a wave of sand, Isis expresses her amazement at the power of Horus's magic, and the honey ant queen agrees. Horus replies that the help is mutual. Suddenly, the queen spots something and calls out. The group arrives at a massive mountain-like structure which serves as the iron ant nest. As they approach, iron ant gods emerge from the entrance. The honey ant queen calls out to Horus, who calmly prepares his magic. Horus unleashes a great sand wave, a massive torrent of sand that engulfs the iron ants. The wave sweeps them away, neutralizing them without causing fatal harm. With the guards dealt with, Horus turns back to his companions. More iron ants charge forward. Horus calmly casts sand bind, trapping the ants. He comments that this should be enough to neutralize the threat for now. Inside the nest, Horus remarks on the wide and sturdy tunnels, and the honey ant queen explains it is iron sand. Horus touches the wall, realizing that if he can control this material, he could help the king. As Horus channels his magic, the iron sand walls begin to move. Isis exclaims in amazement that the walls seem like living things, while Horus is surprised he can control iron sand. He realizes he can now restrain the ants without worrying about running out of regular sand. The group ventures deeper into the wide cavern. Horus is taken aback when he sees the iron ant queen herself has come to meet them, along with her attendants. The formidable iron ant king sits on his throne. The honey ant queen addresses the king, stating she has come to talk. The king dismisses her proposal, claiming he has no need for discussion. The honey ant queen insists there must be room for negotiation. The iron ant king rises from his throne, muttering that they will all die. His threats fill the air, alarming Horus and Isis. The king lunges forward to attack. Horus yells for him to stop. He summons tendrils of iron sand from the ground to bind the king. The spell successfully restrains the charging king. The honey ant queen explains that the king is not normally like this. Using his sand sense, Horus detects another life force inside the king's head. He identifies it as a parasitic demon. Isis wonders if her life magic can help, but Horus states he will prepare to tear the demon off himself. Horus explains he needs to perform a very precise sand control maneuver to remove the parasite without harming the king. He summons a large sand golem. He commands it to hold the possessed king down. The possessed king effortlessly shatters the golem with a single, powerful blow. Isis and the honey ant queen are stunned by his immense strength. Unfazed, Horus declares that if the golem is broken, he will simply make it again. A newly formed golem successfully grapples with the king. It manages to restrain him. With the king held in place, Horus focuses his magic, telling the golem to keep holding him down. Horus carefully manipulates the sand to extract the parasite. The parasitic demon is extracted from the king's head. The parasite is successfully removed. He quickly contains it, stating that he cannot let it go. He immediately turns to Isis and asks about the king's condition. Isis confirms that the king is safe, though the ordeal was draining and she believes he will wake soon. The honey ant queen thanks Horus profusely, but he tells her not to be so formal. He explains that he only did what was necessary as a good neighbor and trading partner. The iron ant king awakens and is relieved to see his queen. Upon spotting the humans, he immediately accuses them of being invaders, but the honey ant queen clarifies that it was Horus who saved him. The king falls silent after the explanation. Embarrassed by his actions while possessed, the iron ant king bows deeply. He apologizes to his queen and thanks Horus for the help. He offers to prepare gifts and apologies. Horus tells him they are not needed, though he does have something to discuss. The king suggests they continue their discussion at his castle. As they walk, the honey ant queen expresses her excitement, having heard about the beauty of the nearby oasis. Inside the grand castle, the ant monarchs marvel at the impressive decorations, which they recognize as a product of Horus's amazing magic. Seated at a large table, Horus begins to make a proposal to the king and queen. He hesitates, finding the situation somewhat awkward. He asks them what their names are, and both the king and the queen reply that they do not have names. Horus remarks that it feels unfamiliar to address them simply as king and queen. After whispering to each other, the ant monarchs turn back to Horus. To his surprise, they ask if he would be willing to give them names. Horus suggests the name Ain for the king and Mel for the queen. The newly named monarchs are overjoyed. Ain declares he will be Horus's treasure for life, while Mel expresses her delight. Suddenly, a bright light envelops them as they begin to transform. The transformation is complete, revealing Ain and Mel in new human-like forms. Horus and Isis are left speechless and utterly shocked by the sudden and dramatic change. Mel happily exclaims that the transformation was a success, and Ain agrees. They ask Horus to put some clothes on them. With bright smiles, they declare that they now belong to him. In their new human forms, Ain and Mel pledge to become Horus's kin. The sight is too much for Horus, who is struck with a massive nosebleed. Inside, Horus is flustered, trying to manage his questions, while Isis insists that Mel needs clothes. Isis urges Mel to cover herself, but Mel, unfamiliar with human customs, apologizes and expresses her concern for Horus. Mel asks if the makeshift clothing will suffice for now. While covering Horus's eyes, Isis decides to make a temporary robe out of sand for Mel. Ain explains that according to legend, when a magical being is named by a human, a contract is formed, leading to their transformation. He admits that becoming fully human was unexpected, but considers it a great fortune and pledges his unwavering loyalty to Horus. Horus worries about the difficulty of them traveling to serve him, but Ain dismisses his concerns. Ain reveals they have relocated their entire castle to be nearby. Horus is shocked by this development. He then notices Mel outside. Ain explains that Mel is already making clothes by weaving threads from leaves. From the ground below, Isis calls out to Horus, asking for his help with something. Isis shows Horus a patch of desert, suggesting they turn it into a farmland. Horus agrees with the idea, but points out that sand drains too well for crops to grow. Isis clarifies that her plan is to first create healthy soil suitable for farming. Horus agrees to help gather the necessary materials. Isis is delighted by his response. As they venture out, they are confronted by a large, lion-like monster. Ain steps forward to handle the monster. He is confident that his strength has increased along with his appearance. Horus asks if he will be all right, and Ain assures him he will be. He mentions his treasured spear. Ain easily holds back the monster's attack with his spear. He declares the beast pathetic and no challenge for him at all. Ain swiftly dispatches the monster with a powerful blow. Resting his spear on his shoulder, he reflects that he has become even stronger than he thought. Horus praises Ain for his amazing feat. Ain explains that he cannot use spells, but merely infused his spear with magic power. He credits his newfound strength to his lord Horus. As they talk, Mel notices birds circling overhead. Mel realizes the birds are targeting the monster's meat and decides to intimidate them. She releases a flash of light, startling the birds away. Horus is surprised and asks if she just used light magic. Mel confirms that she was able to use light magic after evolving from being given a name. She eagerly tells Horus that her power is his to use whenever he wishes. Isis sighs as Horus gets another nosebleed. Isis notes how rare light magic is and how Mel's innocent offer makes the situation even more intense. Later, Isis excitedly points out something to Horus and the others. She has found a field of wild sorghum. She explains that it is a nutritious and great-tasting grain, and finding it in the desert is a huge stroke of luck. The group gets to work harvesting the sorghum and other dried plants for their field. Horus compliments Isis on her impressive knowledge of plants. She happily accepts the praise. Isis announces that good crops come from good soil, so their first step is to make compost. Horus provides a sandbox as requested. Ain and the others bring the materials. Isis explains the compost will be made from shredded palm leaves, dried sorghum, sand, and water. Isis continues her instructions, adding leftover dates to the mix and using her life magic to speed up fermentation. After several more steps involving draining and adding other ingredients, she presents the finished product. The group is impressed with the nice, crumbly soil, relieved that it turned out so well. With the compost finished, Isis declares it is Horus's turn. He confidently takes over, using his sand magic to shape the compost into rods. He then lines them up to create a completed farm plot. Horus asks if the plot is okay, and Isis confirms it is. She adds that while it may not look like much now, the soil will improve and they can expand it later. Horus thanks everyone, acknowledging that their surroundings continue to improve because of their collective efforts. Horus looks over all they have built, a castle, an oasis, a field, and a base for their new companions. He smiles, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everyone's hard work. The group contemplates their next project. Ain suggests they build a watchtower. He points out that the castle is on a hill, but the surrounding dunes are higher, creating a potential vulnerability. Horus agrees that a tower might be necessary, though Ain says it is not urgent, as he will protect him. Horus decides to build it immediately, activating his sand magic to create a sand tower. A magnificent tower of sand rises instantly beside the castle. The group stares in awe at the structure, and Horus excitedly suggests they climb it. From the top of the new tower, the group gazes out at the endless, rolling sand dunes. Horus remarks on the beautiful view, and Isis agrees. Horus watches Isis as she enjoys the breeze. Their moment is interrupted by the cheerful antics of the others, with one telling a creature named Raku to be careful. He reflects that while he hoped for a quiet moment of accomplishment, this lively atmosphere is more typical for them. Suddenly, a giant bird swoops down and snatches Raku, carrying the small creature into the sky. Horus and Isis can only watch in horror, shouting Raku's name. From the newly built watchtower, Horus shouts in alarm as a giant bird carries Raku away into the sky. Without hesitation, Horus leaps from the tower, reassuring his companions that he will handle it. He summons a wave of sand to ride across the desert. He focuses intently on his target as he gives chase. Closing the distance, Horus maneuvers his sand wave directly beneath the bird. He unleashes a powerful sand pillar from the ground. The attack successfully knocks both the bird and Raku out of the sky. Horus follows up with a sand dust violent fist, striking the giant bird head-on. The impact sends Raku flying through the air, causing Isis to cry out in terror for her friend. As Raku plummets towards the desert floor, Horus quickly forms another sand pillar to catch the small creature. He grabs Raku, telling it to hold on tight. He then creates a swirling sand ball around them both to ensure a soft landing. They tumble safely onto the ground. Horus expresses his relief that they are okay. As he lies in the sand, he notices a peculiar glimmer all around him. Looking around, Horus realizes that the entire area is covered in sparkling gold dust. His attention is then drawn to a structure partially buried in the sand dunes nearby. He discovers a staircase leading down into the earth and wonders if it's the entrance to a labyrinth. After confirming he can collect the gold dust, he uses his sand sense to check for traps. Finding no immediate danger, he asks his camel if they should venture inside. Before proceeding, Horus creates a large golem to take the lead. They descend into a vast, well-constructed hall. The grand construction surprises Horace, who had been expecting a simple cave. Admiring the ornate pillars, Horace thinks about how the gold dust could be used to decorate their own castle. His primary concern, however, is whether the place is infested with monsters. He notices a light ahead and wonders if it's an exit. The hallway opens into an enormous, glittering chamber made of gold, dominated by a massive statue. Horace and his camel stare in awe at the sheer scale and opulence of the room. As they explore, Horace notes the absence of any monsters. He muses that it feels more like a palace than a labyrinth. He debates with himself whether the place is a palace or a labyrinth, finding the giant statue particularly out of place for the latter. Suddenly, a voice echoes through the chamber, informing Horace that the figure is not a statue. The voice introduces itself as Canade, a sphinx and a divine beast, leaving Horace utterly stunned. Horace is shocked that the statue spoke. He quickly apologizes for the intrusion, explaining he didn't realize anyone lived there. The Sphinx remarks that most people are blinded by the gold, but finds Horace to be an interesting fellow. When Horace tries to leave, the Sphinx stops him. The Sphinx insists that since he seems to like it here, he should stay, promising a life without hardship. Horace protests, explaining that he has comrades waiting for him and cannot stay forever. The Sphinx considers it disrespectful to simply come and go as he pleases. Horace stands his ground, prepared to leave even if it means using force. The Sphinx finds him brave and proposes a game. The game's rule is simple: answer a question before a piece of heavenly gold falls. If he answers correctly, he will be allowed to leave with a special privilege. Horace considers the terms and agrees. The Sphinx begins to pose its riddle. It describes a being that is cruel yet compassionate, greedy yet sorrowful, and doubtful of everything while wishing for eternity. The Sphinx notes that there is still time to think. Horace calmly gives his answer: humans. The Sphinx bursts into laughter. Horace asks if he was wrong, but the Sphinx confirms his answer is correct. The Sphinx explains that it laughed because he answered so casually. Curious, the Sphinx asks why he answered so quickly. Horace explains that he didn't find the riddle particularly difficult, as it simply described human nature. The Sphinx reveals that everyone who came before him failed to answer. Horace suggests that previous challengers likely knew the answer, but couldn't bring themselves to say it due to restraints like pride and position. The Sphinx praises his wisdom and tells him he can be proud. With the game won, the Sphinx announces it's time for him to leave, and Horace thanks it. As Horace prepares to depart, the giant statue begins to glow with a blinding light, startling him. He shields his eyes as a new form emerges from the light. The light fades to reveal that the Sphinx has taken the form of a beautiful woman, who asks if this is all he wants. Horace is stunned by the transformation. He asks if she is the Sphinx. She proudly states that as a divine beast, changing into a human form is no trouble at all. The Sphinx comments that her human form isn't bad, though its flesh is heavy. She assumes human males prefer larger figures. She teases the silent Horace, asking if he prefers smaller or larger women, and even offers for him to touch her. Flustered, Horace asks why she is in human form, thinking he already answered the question to win his freedom. The Sphinx clarifies, asking for what purpose he wants her in this form. Horace realizes with shock that this is connected to the special privilege he was promised. With a knowing smile, the Sphinx leans forward and reveals the special privilege he has won, her. A young man feels uncomfortable as a woman presses herself against him from behind. He complains that she is too close, but she candidly informs him that she is intentionally pressing against him, causing him to yelp in surprise. The Sphinx, now in a human form, presents herself to Horace as his reward for leaving her domain. Horace is flustered and stammers in protest, but she questions if he is dissatisfied with a divine beast offering to become his kin. She points to a grand gate, stating it won't open without this arrangement. Reassuringly, she tells him not to worry, as she will solve any problems that arise. While traveling through the desert, the Sphinx clings tightly to Horace. He asks her to maintain some distance due to the heat. She reluctantly agrees. She then points out that the way he addresses her doesn't feel right, and asks her new lord to give her a name. After some thought, Horace suggests the name Phi. She repeats the name to herself, then suddenly erupts in laughter. Startled, Horace demands to know what's so funny about the name he chose. Phi explains that she just thought her new lord was quite an outrageous person. She quickly changes the subject, saying she looks forward to serving him. She then tells Horace that as kin, there's no need for honorifics, and he agrees to simply call her Phi. Upon their return, Isis confronts Horus, questioning why he brought a woman back along with the sand gold. Horus asks Phi to introduce herself to everyone. She is immediately suspicious, wondering why a beautiful woman would be alone in the desert and fearing Horus is being deceived. With her arms outstretched, the woman introduces herself as Phi, the Sphinx. She declares that she has become Horus's kin in order to serve him. This revelation leaves the rest of the group completely stunned and speechless. As the group processes the news, Horus decides they need to prepare a room for Phi and asks about her preferences. Phi declares that she will stay in the same room as her lord, claiming it's only natural for kin to remain close. The suggestion leaves Horus shocked and Isis visibly upset. Isis strongly objects, stating that since Phi is currently in the form of a woman, it's not proper for her to share a room with Horus. Another companion chimes in, agreeing that there should be a certain level of privacy. Hearing their points, Horus decides to back down on the matter for now. Phi clarifies to Isis that her decision to relent isn't because of what Isis said, but because Horus himself asked her to. With a satisfied smile, Isis accepts this explanation. Isis asks Phi where she would like her room to be. Phi immediately requests the room right next to Horus's, and a flustered Isis looks to Horus for confirmation. Isis hesitantly agrees to Phi's request. An intense stare-down between Isis and Phi ends with Isis declaring that they should get along from now on. Watching them, Horus sighs in relief, glad that they seem to be getting along already. Later, Horus collapses onto his bed, exhausted from the day's events. He reflects on building the tower, rescuing Raku, and Phi becoming his kin. As he contemplates his plans for the next day, his bedroom door quietly creaks open. As Horus drifts off to sleep, he feels a sudden weight on top of him. He opens his eyes to find Phi leaning over him in his bed. Horus lets out a loud scream. The noise awakens Isis, who bursts into the room calling his name. She is shocked to find Horus on the floor with Phi on his bed, and demands to know what Phi is doing. Yawning, Phi casually claims she was half asleep, and simply went into the wrong room. Enraged by the blatant excuse, Isis screams in disbelief. While bathing with Isis and Mel, Phi complains of boredom, wishing she had gone with her master. Isis reminds her that they have the important task of watching the fields. Phi then muses that she could be useful to her master in both his work and private life, day or night, prompting Isis to tell her to watch her words. Isis sarcastically suggests that if Phi is so eager, she can also help care for the crops for Horus. Mel agrees that a table with both meat and vegetables would make Lord Horus happy. Getting out of the water, Isis chides the others for lounging around and urges them to get started. She then looks towards the horizon, expressing her belief that Horus and the others will be fine. Meanwhile, in the vast desert, an explosion erupts in the distance. Ain calls out to Lord Horus, who confirms he is ready. A figure casts a magic spell. In response to an unseen threat, Horus swiftly erects an iron sand wall to block the attack. He recoils from the impact, noting the intense heat. Horus exclaims that it was a close call. As another attack barrels towards them, Ain creates a sandwave shield to defend. Horus shouts Ain's name in alarm, realizing their opponent is far too strong. Ain admits he didn't expect this level of power. Ain identifies their foe as a sand turtle mole, explaining that it has become unusually strong from eating quartz in the region. The creature's back begins to glow ominously. Ain realizes it's gathering light for an attack, which can't be good. In a panic, Horus yells to erect more iron sand walls. The monster charges up a powerful energy beam. Horus and Ain cry out in terror, knowing that if the beam hits them, they'll be destroyed. As the situation grows dire, Horus calls out for Raku. The beam strikes a quartz crystal, reflecting off its surface. Horus has a sudden realization: the quartz crystals reflected the blast. He quickly formulates a new strategy, reinforcing a sand wall with iron sand, layering it with quartz, and coating the surface with gold sand. Horus unleashes his new technique, a makeshift mirror barrier. Confident in his plan, Horus declares that they can now reflect the beam. As the monster fires its attack, the mirror barrier holds firm. The energy is deflected straight back at the creature, which cries out in agony. The sand turtle mole collapses, defeated. After the battle, Horus recounts the events to the women who have just arrived. He gestures to the fallen beast, identifying it as a sand turtle mole. Isis, Mel and Phi are all stunned by its enormous size, with Isis calling it huge and Mel exclaiming that it's amazing. Mel admires the sparkly stones on the creature's back, and Ain tells her it's more than just a pretty rock. Horus confirms that it's quartz, a material used to make glass. The revelation surprises both Isis and Phi. An idea strikes Horus: they can make window glass to finally complete the castle's windows. He delegates tasks to the group, asking Phi to melt the quartz, Isis and Mel to sort dried plants, and Ain to help him. Everyone eagerly agrees to their new project. Atop the workshop, Ain announces that the quartz is ready. Horus gives Phi the signal to proceed. Horus hopes the process goes well. A powerful blast of heat erupts from the furnace. The intense heat forces Horus to shield his face. He breathes a sigh of relief, glad that it worked. The first sheet of glass is successfully made, and the group celebrates. Enthusiastically, they decide to make more. Horus inspects the new window pane with satisfaction. Looking out at the grand castle, he congratulates everyone on a job well done. Horus thanks everyone for their hard work. He proudly announces that they also managed to create a mirror. Isis stares at the massive mirror, remarking on its size and expressing her happiness at finally being able to tidy herself up properly. Suddenly, Mel rushes to Horus in a panic, exclaiming that she's developed a terrible lump on her chest. A flustered Horus doesn't know how to react. Phi calmly explains to Mel that it's natural for breasts to have lumps. Ain states that he doesn't have any lumps, prompting Phi to retort that he is more like armor than a person anyway. Horus is left speechless by the entire exchange. Horus frantically waves his hands, insisting to a silent Isis that he didn't see anything. Meanwhile, Ain turns to Isis and innocently asks if she also lacks this lump thing. He observes that while Phi and Mel have what are called breasts, he doesn't see any on her. Ain continues his observation, noting that Isis shows no signs of any swelling at all, much to Horus's dismay. An incensed Isis retorts that she does have them. She then grabs Ain's arm, squeezing it with immense force. Isis tells Ain he should probably focus on learning other things first, causing him to cry out in pain. Isis mutters defensively that she isn't that small, it's just that the other two are excessively large. Horus looks over his companions, reflecting on how it used to be just him, but now his group has grown to 5 people and 1 creature. Horus smiles, thinking that it feels like his family keeps growing and every day becomes more fun. He ponders the idea of family for a moment. His thoughts then drift to someone else, wondering how Morja is doing. The scene shifts to a vast, desolate desert where a lone figure makes their way across the endless dunes. The figure is breathing heavily from the exertion. The traveler, Morja Magrev, finds the desert harsher than she ever imagined. She laments not being prepared enough, calling it the desert of death. She regrets that she couldn't force her brothers to tell her where Horus was exiled, though she doubts they would have answered her anyway. Morja uses spatial magic to conjure a flower. She whispers her brother Horus's name. She begins to lose hope, thinking the search is impossible for someone like her. However, she quickly steals her resolve. She declares that she can't give up and will never return to that castle. As she continues her journey, she vows not to go back even if they beg. Morja is surprised to spot a rabbit, wondering why it would be out in the middle of the desert. Suddenly, a giant, frog-like monster erupts from the sand in front of her. Morja cries out in shock. She sees her own reflection in the creature's massive, unblinking eye. The monster lashes out with its long tongue. Morja clicks her tongue in annoyance as she dodges. She swiftly casts a spatial transfer spell to deal with the attack. After defending herself, Morja suddenly stumbles. She feels an intense, burning heat spreading through her body and realizes with horror that the monster's saliva must be poison. Overcome by the venom, she collapses into the sand. Isis correctly guesses he's referring to spatial magic. Horus comments on how things have become more convenient lately. He laments that if he could use it like his little sister, he could have easily stored food and tools. Isis agrees it would be very convenient. At the table, Ain asks for a crab claw. Isis, her curiosity piqued, asks Horus about his family, surprised to learn he has a little sister. The group expresses their desire to know more about Horus's sister. Horus realizes he's only ever told them about his banishment. He explains that he was exiled for having only a single sand attribute and that his little sister, Morja, was the only one who cared for him. Ain slams his fist on the table in anger. He is outraged that a king's power was so underestimated, while Phi remarks on how foolish humans can be. Isis finds it strange that only his sister recognized his worth. Horus speculates that Morja might have inherited more of their mother's blood, as she was said to dislike conflict. Horus quietly wonders if Morja is doing well. His thoughts are interrupted by frantic chirping as small insectoid creatures rush in. Ain recognizes them as the scouts he sent to survey the area. Ain reports to Horus that the scouts found a collapsed girl to the southwest. When Horus asks for her features, Ain begins to describe her. The description of a blonde girl with jewel-like eyes leaves Horus stunned. The report reveals Morja was poisoned and abducted by sand goblins, and Horus declares they must save her. Horus fears for Morja's fate, remembering what happened to Isis. Phi reassures him that one of the scouts is tailing the goblins. Determined, Horus leaps from a window, ready to go. Horus creates a wave of sand and yells for everyone to go. He calls out to Phi and tells Ain to have the scouts guide them. As they rush off, Phi cautions her master not to get carried away. She privately worries about the shackles the goblins used. Phi explains that sand goblins are cunning, but their method of abduction is unusual. Horus acknowledges the danger. He summons a giant sandbird to carry them faster. Aboard the sandbird, Horus assures Phi he is calm. Isis expresses relief that they managed to avoid any attacks. Mel agrees that her worry was needless. They fly over a rocky, desolate landscape. The group arrives in a narrow canyon, which the scout identifies as the place. The scout points them further ahead. Horus stops as he spots a sand flower on the ground. His companions look on, concerned. He recognizes it as the flower he sent to his sister, confirming they are on the right trail. With grim determination, the group stands united, knowing Morja is nearby. Horus confirms that his sister has been captured by the goblin sand up ahead. Ain adds that the pheromone trail leads directly to their den, and they decide to head there at once. They arrive at the entrance to a cave fortified with giant bones. 2 goblin sentries stand guard outside. The group identifies it as the goblin sand's base. Horus translates the scout's wish for more strength to fight. Hearing this, Ain suddenly kneels before Lord Horus, startling him. The other women also clamor for their master's attention, wanting to be petted. Horus is bewildered by his familiar's shared desire to be petted. The girl with antennae eagerly volunteers to go first to clear the way. The girl unleashes a light magic finger flash, instantly incapacitating the goblin guards. The attack alerts the other goblins. Phi looks on, unimpressed. Phi telekinetically lifts a massive boulder. The goblins are shocked by the display of power. She smashes it down near the cave entrance. The commotion draws out a horde of goblins from the cave. Ain chides Phi for being too flashy, as she notes they've called for reinforcements. Horus declares their intent to defeat them all. He issues commands to his companions for the upcoming battle. As the battle begins, Horus and the others charge in. Isis watches with frustration, wishing she could fight too. When a goblin attacks, Isis grabs a club and strikes it down. After the swift battle, the group stands over the defeated goblins. Ain remarks that the flashy explosions just kept attracting more of them. Horus refocuses the group on their main objective, finding Morja. They proceed into the cave, with one of the women offering to provide light. Inside, they find plundered goods from adventurers. Suddenly, Horus spots something ahead. Peering deeper into the cavern, they see a large encampment of goblins. In the foreground, lying unconscious and shackled, is Horus's sister, Morja. Horus is about to rush forward to his sister, but Isis stops him. He spots a goblin shaman. Behind the shaman sits a massive goblin giant. Phi wonders if it's the goblin king, but Ain corrects her, identifying it as a goblin giant. The group realizes that with the shaman's magic and the giant's strength, they can't attack carelessly. Phi confidently offers to blow everything up instantly. Isis quickly objects, reminding her that Morja would be caught in the blast. Horus decides that Phi will be their secret weapon, held in reserve. He asks her to wait for his signal if things get dangerous. A bit reluctantly, Phi agrees. Meanwhile, the goblins below discuss what to do about the intruders. He notes that sand goblins are fond of shiny things and that their lack of numbers is a problem. Acknowledging the situation, he decides on a strategy to save his sister. While a golem engages a horde of goblins, Horus hides nearby with a companion. He explains that the golem is just a distraction, allowing them to get closer to rescue his sister, Morja. His companion nervously calls out his name. Mel asks if something is wrong, but Horus reassures her he was just surveying the area. Determined, Mel declares she will stick close to him as they approach their target. Horus agrees and they prepare to move forward together. In a brief flashback, Horus outlines the rescue plan. Phi and Ain will use the golem as a diversion. This will create an opening for him and Mel, concealed by a veil, to rescue Morja. Mel worries she might hinder him in a fight. Horus clarifies her role. She will only use her light magic to blind the enemy as a last resort if they are spotted. With Ain and Phi giving their approval, the operation commences. As Horus and Mel sneak past the goblin horde, a shaman senses their presence. The shaman lets out a guttural cry. Suddenly, a blast of magic alerts Horus that their cover is blown. Before them stands a hulking goblin giant. Horus is shocked that they were discovered. A smaller goblin readies its axe. Horus reacts instantly, summoning an iron sand wall to block the giant's attack. He calls out to Mel to use her magic. Mel unleashes her light magic, creating a blinding flash. The bright light stuns the goblins. Seizing the opportunity, Horus rushes forward and scoops up the unconscious Morja. He entrusts Morja to Isis. Horus instructs Isis to get Morja to safety, while he deals with the remaining enemies. The goblin shaman casts reinforcement magic, causing the goblin giant to swell in size and power. Now that Morja is safe, Horus feels he can finally go all out without holding back. Horus unleashes a powerful spell, Sand Magic, Iron Sand Spear. Countless sharp spears materialize from the ground, surrounding the enormous goblin from all sides. The spears converge on the goblin in a massive explosion. The creature remains standing in the aftermath. Ain and Phi watch from a distance, impressed by Horus's display of power. Away from the battle, Morja begins to stir. As her eyes flutter open, she sees Horus and weakly calls out to her brother. Horus is overjoyed to see that she is finally awake. Morja joyfully embraces her brother, relieved to be safe. Horus comforts her, saying everything is all right now. Nearby, Isis reminds a tearful companion that it's not time to relax yet. Morja clings tightly to Horus, taking in his familiar scent. Her relief quickly turns into an intense display of affection as she declares she can't hold back anymore, begging him to hug her tighter. Isis watches, stunned by the forwardness of her pleas. While embracing her brother, Morja glances over at Isis. Isis is taken aback when she sees the cold, hostile glare in Morja's eyes, a look one would give to an enemy. Morja turns to Horus and begins insulting his companions, calling them a suspicious seductress, an unbalanced girl, and a scheming witch. Horus calmly explains that they are all his comrades who helped rescue her. The revelation leaves Morja shocked. Morja offers a brief, insincere apology for her rudeness. She immediately declares that she won't hand her brother over to anyone. Horus is confused by her possessive behavior, noting that he doesn't remember her ever being so clingy. Noticing the shackle on Morja's wrist, Horus decides to remove it. He uses a sand blade, but it fails to damage the shackle. To his and Morja's surprise, it doesn't leave a single scratch. Seeing this, Ain steps in, offering to try himself. Ain's attempt also fails to damage the shackle. He asks Phi for help, and she reveals that the shackle has a curse inscription on it, making it difficult to remove. Hearing this, Isis gets an idea and suggests they try asking the shackle itself. The shackle suddenly speaks, mocking their efforts. The group is stunned that it's alive. The shackle confirms it can talk. Morja recoils in disgust, calling it gross, but the shackle simply tells her to stop trying to remove it. The shackle chides Morja for her rudeness. Phi observes that Isis used an interesting magic, though it failed. Isis explains that her magic grants life force, and she had hoped that by giving the shackle a will, she could simply ask it to unlock itself. The shackle defiantly states that its purpose is to lock, not unlock. Isis persists in asking for its removal. The shackle offers a proposition. It might consider releasing Morja if Isis agrees to let it lock onto her instead. Morja flatly refuses to let Isis be her substitute. Ain suggests Morja could use her spatial magic to escape. She gravely warns them against it, explaining that if she's separated from the shackle, the curse will transfer to Isis and kill her. Morja resigns herself to the fact that the shackle will be with them for a while. She decides that since it can't be helped, she will give it a name, Shackle. Morja tells the shackle to consider it an honor. The sentient object reluctantly accepts its new name. With the immediate danger past, Phi suggests they explore the goblin den, and Ain agrees, noting that goblins are known to hoard treasure. Horus realizes they might find something to remove the shackle, and eagerly agrees to investigate the cave. Isis nervously points out that Morja's physical closeness to Horus is not typical for siblings. Morja dismisses her concern, insisting their behavior is perfectly normal, though the others clearly disagree. Morja's possessiveness intensifies as she gets uncomfortably close to Horus, declaring his vision should be filled with her alone. Phi tries to intervene, telling Morja to show some respect. Morja refuses to move, questioning why she should switch places with Isis. Asserting her status as the strongest vassal, Phi prepares to use teleportation magic to separate them. Morja acknowledges that they saved her, for which she is thankful. However, with a confident smile, she declares that her relationship with her brother is an entirely separate matter. Horus and his companions venture deeper into the goblin's nest, considering the possibility of hostages given the cave's size. Suddenly, Horus hears a faint voice, and Isis calls out his name in surprise. They come across a large cage. Horus recoils from the foul odor emanating from the cell. Inside, several terrified demi-human children are imprisoned. Ain shatters the cage door. Horus thanks him for his help. He extends a hand to the frightened children, reassuring them that it's safe to come out now. The children remain terrified. Horus notices the slave collars on their necks and realizes their plight. One boy, armed with a sharp object, defensively asks if they've come to sell them off again. Isis calmly tells the boy they have no such intentions. Isis approaches the group, explaining that they came to help. She notices one of the children is lying on the ground, injured. Using her life magic, Isis heals the injured boy's wound. The other children watch in amazement as it disappears. Horus asks if they will trust them. The defiant boy shouts his refusal. One of the girls explains their situation is more complicated. They are under a goblin's curse. She reveals a magical mark on her body. A companion grimly realizes they were magically altered to bear goblin children. The girl scoffs at their offer of help, finding the timing suspicious. One of Horus's companions removes the simple collar from a child, noting it's an old model. Isis then kneels before the cursed girl, explaining that her life magic can rewind her body's state and remove the magical curse. As Isis uses her magic, the cursed mark on the girl's body vanishes. The freed girl exclaims in shock that the magic is gone. The slave collar on the ground breaks apart. Isis smiles, telling her she is no longer a slave. The children are overjoyed at their newfound freedom, though one worries they are still registered with the slave guild. Horus reassures them, explaining that this desert will be his brother's land and they have nothing to fear. Overcome with emotion, one of the girls thanks them through tears. To change the subject, Horus suggests they resume their treasure hunt. He reasons that since they saved the children, it would be a shame to return empty-handed. The rescued children are in awe, having heard that the group defeated a huge goblin. Morja proudly boasts that Horus uses sand magic and is perfect to be the king of the desert. The children, impressed, begin to call him Your Majesty. The children continue to praise Horus as their Majesty, much to his embarrassment. Phi adds to the praise, reminding everyone that he built a castle and tamed divine beasts. The children are further astonished by these revelations. Phi embraces Horus, telling the children they are fortunate to stand before the future king. She provocatively suggests that a king naturally surrounds himself with women. The rescued children are shocked by the suggestion. Horus, flustered, pushes her away, denying it. Phi continues to hold onto Horus. Horus is caught in the middle, overwhelmed by the attention. Morja and Mel rush in, jealously declaring their own desire to serve the king. As the women vie for his attention, Horus protests. The rescued children turn to Isis and ask what she will do. Blushing, Isis insists that she and Horus are merely comrades and that no such service is necessary. The children encourage Isis not to lose, making her even more flustered. One of the children warns her that the others will snatch the king if she doesn't act. Horus, managing to get some space, turns and calls out to Isis. Isis is left speechless and blushing. Horus is equally flustered by the entire situation. The rescued children watch the scene unfold, with one commenting that their big brother has fallen for the witch's charms. The group ventures further, discovering a cavern filled with sparkling crystals. The children are amazed by the sight. One of them addresses Horus as king, but he gently corrects her. A child reveals that the entire place is filled with jewel sand. Phi observes a pile of seashells, deducing the goblins must have gathered them as a food source. The group marvels at their lucky find. Horus questions the practical use of the jewels, but Phi notes that assets are never a loss. She then makes a discovery: the jewels are in the form of sand. Realizing the potential, Horus uses his sand magic to create a diamond golem from the jewel sand. His companions are impressed by the feat. He decides they should take as much of the sand as their castle can store. Meanwhile, Phi notices something on the cavern wall. Phi reveals a message inscribed on the wall. It declares the area as the dominion of the Desert King, forbidding the removal of any resources, and is signed by the Sphinx. Horus is shocked to realize they have inadvertently been placed under the control of this unknown king. Returning to the castle, the group travels across the desert on a wave of sand. The rescued children are amazed by the speed, exclaiming that Horus's sand magic is incredible. Horus turns to get Phi's attention. Horus looks at a massive sand wall he has erected, wondering if it was too much. Phi reassures him that it's not. She explains that since he is not yet a king, he must demonstrate his power to claim the land as his own. The rescued children are awestruck by its massive scale. Upon arriving at the sand castle, they are stunned. They excitedly greet a camel. A man accompanying them confirms that he is the one who saved them. Through a teleportation link, someone asks Morgiana why she is going to the desert, to which she replies that she has grown tired of her situation. Isis worries if Horus's treatment was harsh. He assures her it wasn't. Morgia reflects on how the Emperor and another woman's attitudes changed instantly when they learned of her brother's sand affinity. She laments their foolish choice, believing the incident proved Horus's greatness. She states she had no regrets the moment she banished her own brother. Filled with new resolve, Morgia tearfully declares that she will devote herself to her brother's side from now on. Horus looks on, moved by her words. Phi remarks that his younger sister has good judgment. Later, under the crescent moon, an investigator arrives at the now desolate goblin nest. He surveys the scene, taking in the destroyed cell. He wonders what happened here. Inside the cave, the investigator is shocked to discover the walls are covered in sparkling gem sand. Recalling the destroyed cell and goblin corpses he saw on his way, he deduces that someone rescued slaves and made off with the jewels. The investigator discovers the message Horus left on the sand wall. He questions the message, wondering if a divine beast is really present. He reads the claim to the land but dismisses it as a simple threat. He plans to defeat the goblins and force the freed slaves to carry the valuable gem sand. He decides to report back for now. The scene moves to Eldora, the capital of the El Dorado Republic. The investigator from the desert reports all the information he obtained to a man named Tanara. Tanara thanks the investigator for his hard work. He asks if he has told anyone else about his findings. After the man confirms his silence, Tanara signals for an aide to present him with a reward. The investigator, addressing Mr. Tanara, explains that the information is extremely valuable and implies he expects more. Tanara laughs, remarking on the man's greed, but agrees to his demands. Suddenly, the meeting is violently interrupted as Tanara and his men are swiftly killed. Moments later, a maid and another man enter the room, crying out in shock at the massacre. The man entering expresses alarm, but a seemingly unharmed Tanara dismisses the corpses as a non-issue. A new arrival, a well-dressed cat person named Alibaba, tosses a stack of money for the cleanup costs. He announces that the previous reservation time is past, it is now his turn. Tanara taunts Alibaba, calling him a stray cat and questioning if his business is in trouble. Alibaba coldly questions Tanara's ability to keep a contract when he can't even keep time, implying it would be fine to kill them. Tanara begins to reply. He then collapses to the floor. Alibaba calmly states that he needs to clean up first. A wave of dark magic engulfs the bodies, making them vanish. He then sits down and cheerfully asks to be served some delicious food. Later, Alibaba discusses the strange story about Tanara with his attendant, opting to observe for now. He admits his impatience to move, explaining his urgency is because the gold mined in the Magraf Empire has decreased. The attendant notes that El Dorado's gold is imported and asks if Alibaba plans to replace the empire. Alibaba mentions rumors that the desert is a treasure trove of resources. He wonders about the man who always spoke of going there. Back in the desert, a cat girl traveler is in a panic as she flees from something. Her belongings are scattered all around her. A giant sand snake lunges at the cat girl, its mouth wide open. She screams for someone to help her. A voice calls out an incantation for an iron sand great spear. Giant spears of iron sand erupt from the ground, impaling the massive snake. Horus rushes to the catgirl's side to ask if she is okay, while she stares in shock, surprised to see another person. Horus has the catgirl restrained with sand. She pleads with him, claiming she's harmless and will allow perverted things. A flustered Horus shouts that he won't, frustrated that she is wary of him even after he